So I sent you that email. We have seen that we have to replace this speaker this time. So we're actually lucky that we could find somebody, and I think we have a very interesting presentation today. So my pleasure to introduce Dr. Benjamin George from Department of Information Operations and Technology Management.
Yes, we're changing the name because nobody can. The IoTM thing makes no sense to anybody. I'm the same way, right? Like, what the word are we actually trying to say?
Which is from College of Business and Innovations, and so Dr. George has been he has a PhD from University of North Texas, and then he has been associated with other institutions also. He has been with University of South Dakota and also University of Wisconsin. I don't remember which one.
La Crosse, it's called. Next to the river. Don't do that.
And today he's going to talk about research on non-structured data and specifically, mining basically text for research on that topic, and kind of a big change, right? We're supposed to have somebody talking about power electronics, and now we're going to have somebody talking about data.
Yeah, I'm very much not a power electronic guy. Sorry, guys.
And this work probably has to do with Dr. George's work as editor or associate editor
Yep.
of
I'll talk a little bit about that too.
Journal of Business Analytics. My wife does a lot of business analytics, so I have some idea about that. So, okay, so I think that's it. Welcome again, Dr. George, and please get started.
Any questions before I start? No? Do this backwards. All right, my name is Benjamin George. I have a PhD in management science, which that's okay. PhD in management science, which basically means applied quant in business. There's like 7 different silos of it. Truthfully, it was kind of, my branch was kind of analytics before it was analytics. And so, hey, things could happen when you're old. More interestingly, I'm also the associate editor of the Journal of Business Analytics. I review and work through everything from my EEE engineering management to all sorts of stuff. I probably do 30 or 40 reviews a year. I'm a busy guy. The bigger thing is, so I'm going to run through this lecture, and I'm also going to talk to you guys a little bit about how the AE process and review process works, because 9 times out of 10, that stuff, especially young academics, really have questions about, because no one ever tells you how it actually happens. What does the magic happen behind the stage, right? The bigger question you start dealing with all this, though, is I come out of business, but it really doesn't matter, right? Everybody has your scope and silo, whatever you're working on. The same thing we'll talk about with the text mining concepts today. It doesn't matter what you're researching. This is just another tool. The biggest thing, especially from you guys from a research perspective, is you have to understand, hey, logic of research question, what can I, right? What sounds interesting? What data do I have? What can I do with it? The funniest part about management science, in many ways, I'm actually just a statistician. I'm an applied quant guy. And so there'll be a lot of discussion about how, what, where, why. If you know anything about stat, the basic assumption is data predicts what you can do, right? So based off the data you have, how I can analyze your question. So just realize if you want to go with anything that's unstructured, text mining or whatnot, it's going to depend on what data you can get. And so a lot of these things, it's just another stat tool. All right, so as we kind of go through it, first thing we're talking about, what's text mining? Easy. Talk about some common ones, and I'll do a couple of examples of stuff I used. Talk about LSA and LDA. If you know anything about text mining, there's tons and tons and tons of different approaches. I'll stick with the 2 simplest because one's basically probabilistic stat, not quite association rules if you've played with that. The other one is kind of like factor analysis, right? So common grouping methods, right? Those are the easiest ways. We could really dive into the math if you really want to, but from a high level, funny enough, they get about the same answer. There's all sorts of wonderful logarithm papers about, hey, which one does what with precision, accuracy, all the concepts with it. Funny enough, depending on what your underlying corpus is, it's about the same answer. What gets you in trouble with this, and this is why I enjoy it, is it's text. Words are dirty. Not probably the concept you guys think of it, but words are dirty because there's multiple meanings. Context matters. Location in the sentence matters. How do you play with all that? Because most of this stuff, you'll hear people talk about term frequency index, right? TF-IDF, make a matrix of how often they happen, where it is, counts. That kind of only sort of works because it's only just a word. So there's all sorts of other things you have to play with it. But the bigger question you have is, okay, so I'm doing counts and math and words, but what am I actually trying to solve? What am I trying to do? Because I can run text mining on anything. It doesn't matter, right? Just give me a bunch of words, I put it in the machine, clean it up, hit button. The problem you get with any of these, and we start talking about why this matters for you guys, is when you do applied text mining or applied research with this, one of the things you have to have involved, and I don't care what the field is multiple people that are subject matter experts in it. Because I can get a bunch of words that come out, but if you don't know what that group of words, that means something completely different. Yeah. Here lately, I've published several in accounting. I'm not a big accounting guy. And so groups of words will come out, and I'm like, these two things are the same thing, right? And they kind of like, no, right? And it's the same thing. And so when you talk about even groups of words, you can go and scrape the most common, whatever your top 3 journals are in computer science. Pull all the abstracts. If you really want to talk about how to do that, I can show you. And just scrape all of those and look at the different topics that come out. Look at how they've changed over time. Well, I guarantee you there's going to be topics that come out that you see versus what I see aren't going to be the same thing, right? And so there's a lot of these things of, we talk about this, but it's all context dependent. And so hopefully out of all this, if you have any questions later on or stuff you want to work with, right, you can apply it to something else. This stuff is being done in the business discipline. One is talking about quality stuff and basically service versus product quality concepts. And the other one is actually talking about assurance seals, i.e., hey, we did this, we're good, whatever you get from some form of authority agency for, which one is that? That is security software. Because a very close friend of mine actually is a big IS security guy, which we'll have another discussion about him another time. Very, very close buddy of mine. But it's just one of these things. They're context dependent. I guarantee you there are areas of interest for what you guys work with that have huge amounts of unstructured data. So the question is, how do you get it? What do you get it? What do you do with it? What questions are you trying to ask with it? All right, so this is generally one of my favorite quotes. We're drowning in information but starving for data. This guy by the name of Rutherford Rogers, funny enough, actually was born in 1915. This quote initially came out in 1971 when he was moving up the chain eventually to be the head librarian for the Library of Congress. Before he died in 2015, so about 2012, they actually asked him what he thought about this. The world hasn't changed. Even with the internet, it's actually gotten worse. And so it's an absolutely fascinating point of, I have all sorts of information out there, but I've learned nothing from it. Right? These things are beautiful. They're wonderful. They're also just an absolute just deluge of information, but not knowledge. And so how do we change that? And so as we kind of start talking about this, what's text mining? We can do anything. Text is a little small, mainly because this is just more of a speaking lecture. Realize that what we're trying to do with this is, it's a bunch of terms. I can use dozens and dozens of this. Biggest thing that happens with text mining is I take unstructured data, I generate structure to it, and then I do some form of statistical tool with it to find knowledge from it. There's lots of different approaches, there's lots of different ways, but from a grand scheme of things, all we're going to do. But the biggest thing is it overlaps with a ton of fields. Data mining, AI, machine learning, computational linguistics, which is a really fun field, but a little bit crazy. Library and information sciences. How do your search engines work, right? Database. And oh yeah, by the way, stat. Sorry, can't get away from it. You got to learn it. Yes, I know. That's generally the same answer I get from everybody else. You don't like the idea. But the problem with this is you can do a bunch of stuff with it. So you get this, big ugly Venn diagram. I chopped out all the animation at the same time. I play in this box. Concept extraction through natural language processing. Right? Because give me big topics and themes. This guy over here, web, which is a little bit of everything, is becoming much more interesting, especially probably for the computer science side, because there's all sorts of, it's a wonderful, big, beautiful box that no one really has any rules for yet. Web mining is absolutely interesting. Classification and clustering of documents. How do you think search engines work? Right? Where does stuff go? How do I type in keywords? That's why this guy overlaps with some of the library tech for information retrieval. Right? How do I pull up exactly what I want? But the problem with this, all of this stuff, all of it, is text mining. That's what makes this a problem. Because much like if you're from the industrial engineering side, it's like saying, give me the definition of quality. Everybody has a different one. There is no definition. What does text mining do? Right? Anything. Funny enough, one of the biggest misnomers, and we'll talk about this quite a bit, most of what text mining does is put a piece of information into a box. So it's if you're going to go break it into a classic stat standpoint, it's incredibly descriptive in nature. You're just adding some form of binary text somewhere. What you do with it and how you combine it to something else is how you change that information into knowledge. And so one of the biggest misnomers from a text mining standpoint is I can take all of this one chunk or one data source and generate, wonderful, crazy ideas. No, I give you a great description of what's in there. But I can't do anything with it. There is no way to leverage it. There is no dependent variable. So you need to tie this to something else. It's kind of one of the bigger takeaways before we even get super crazy. Right, so what do we try to do? Don't do frequencies and count. Right? Don't just search for documents. We don't need a search engine. We're trying to find meaningful patterns across documents. Because the boundaries, right, what we're actually trying to look for is never fixed. It's never fixed because people keep on writing. There's always more and more stuff. And by the way, words are all directly tied to interpretation. Right? How do we work with this? And so you get simple, easy stuff, right? How do I do it? What are we trying to do? Start at the very top. Right? What's the application we're working for? What's the question? Corpus generation just means find data. Corpus is just a whole bunch of library of documents. And that's very careful because a lot of these terms get used interchangeably. But very simply, I don't care what you're doing. If you don't understand what your data is, you're wasting everybody's time. Right? What's the boundaries? What do you know? And this applies for pretty much everything you guys do analysis with. It doesn't matter. If I just give you numbers and you run analysis on it, you don't understand that, hey, you know what, this is based this way, or it's temperature, so hey, 0 actually has meaning or not. These types of concepts are incredibly important. Doesn't matter for anything you're working. Then we go through text pre-processing step, we clean the stuff up. Once again, anybody that does computer science with large data stuff, we make fun of the wonderful joys of how much we love doing data cleaning. You're lying, it's okay. I still love you. But when it comes down to it, I have to start getting rid of junk. I have to figure out, get rid of all the ums and the ands, if you're going to go through that from a set of speech. Or hey, there's basically words with no meaning, or no actually weight, like the. You clean it up. And then we do patterns, figure out what actually happens. The problem with this, like anything else, this is incredibly an iterative modeling analysis or modeling approach. Back and forth, lots of fix, change. It's really, really fascinating. It's also sometimes incredibly tedious, even incredibly frustrating. It's okay though, because like anything else, eventually something pops out and you see it and you get that aha moment, this is what this does. Take off. If not, you start crying and beating your head against the table. We've been that approach too. And then, once you're done, right, what actually happens? So the problem with this, and what gets us in trouble, maybe we can use those terms, is that we get it, we clean it. So generally what we do, we get rid of high and low frequency words, so the, then, a, and then words that happen so rarely. If you do stat, right, go back to statistical power argument. I got one observation, doesn't matter how useful it is, I've got a corpus of 27,000 documents, statistically irrelevant, go away, right? So you have highs and lows. You go through it, drop them down to some form of roots, right? So there's no eds, ings, all the various different tenses. We call these guys generally term. We build a matrix, and then it does something in the black box. The reason I call this the black box is the two simplest ones, LSA and LDA, they do two different things. Once you get this, we get a set of terms that we're going to define whatever this is, and then these are the documents that are associated with it. So the problem with this, like anything else, is that the boundaries, the margins of everything is not all going to go together, right? I'm having topics, but I'm having to limit some terms because either they're not important or they don't have high enough frequency. So the likelihood of me being able to describe all of the information in my corpus, right, relatively small. If you're taking one of my grad classes, and this will actually talk about the math of determining how many topics you can actually extract, and there's huge arguments about that, of what's essentially eigenvector arguments of what you can and can't do. But when it gets down to it, give me a description what's in there, right? Shouldn't be that crazy. Go read all your students' assignments and tell me for the most part what they're writing about. Guarantee you have a couple of them that just went completely off the reservation. It doesn't make any sense, right? But for the most part, I can put it into 6 topics or 6 groups. Well, what you do in your head, I can still do with text mining. And so, how do we play with these, right? How do we convert our terms and documents to various different latent topics? So we'll talk about the 2 different ones, matrix reduction approach, so latent semantic, or that's the very original one. There's a whole bunch of ways it's driven off of it. And then probabilistic, so LDA. I'm not going to get into naive Bayes or some of the other more cool ones, just because these are the 2 basic directions. If you want to do more than this, you'll have to take one of my doctoral seminar classes. So LSA, very, very easy. The big thing you have to deal with is assumptions. Words similar in meaning occur in similar segments of text, right? So if they mean the same, they get used the same, in the same way. That's a big assumption, right? The better software and the better designs actually allow us to tag difference of a noun versus an adjective versus, right, different ways to do this. That's incredibly important. Same thing with something called like engrams, right? Bigrams. Information system, and information system technology are 3 words, but together, right, that means one thing. Individually, they mean different pieces. Well, really you're just doing different ways to tag and basically inflate your big frequency matrix, right? Different ways to count. So you start with, right, everybody. Really what I care about are these 2, U and VT, right? My transpose V metrics. So this guy here is just the factors by factors. So it's just single value decomposition if you're going to do the matrix algebra. That's all it does. So it takes this guy, breaks it down into 3 matrices, knowing that, hey, I'm going to have a factor by factor matrix in the middle that allows me to break in the other 2. That's all it does. I'm not going to go crazy on the math and actually work all the way through it, but that's the logic. If you've ever done like factor analysis on any software, that's what it does. That's it, right? So it breaks these down. The reason I care, though, is I want this guy. So each of the factors I'm using, what words are in there, and for every factor or group we find out, right, whatever topic we have, what documents are associated to them. If I have those, now I can say this is what's in it, and these are the documents they relate to. So it just took what we generally have as counts by the document into something else. That's all it does. Not super crazy. There's a lot of different things underneath the hood that makes it much more fascinating. But from an up top standpoint, that's all you're trying to do. You can do this with all sorts of unstructured data. It doesn't matter. Right? I should have, if I'd have known earlier, I'd have just pulled some computer science journals and ran all of them just to show you. Just because I can, right? It's not that hard to do. But how do you get there? Right? Well, you need the data. Once you have the data in the question, then I need these two to be able to make, right, any form of value out of it. But the flip side is, in that format, it's only descriptive, right? This is what I have. If that's sufficient for a publication in your field, great. Or more appropriately, this is generally a great stepping off point at the beginning portion of your dissertation. If you're looking for another way to get past a structured lit review, that's a different discussion point, right? This is also what I found to make sure there isn't something else we're missing. The flip side is something like LDA. The biggest way to play with this, guys, is association rules. Do you guys ever play with that? Kind of, sort of. The old beer and diaper discussion. You ever heard that one? Oh, you never. Oh, this is a classic data mining story. So from the classic data mining story is I buy stuff, right? I don't care where you're at. And I keep track of the things you buy. And I put it into the database. So customer X bought beer and diapers. What they're saying is they ran a bunch of association rules. So probabilities, essentially, probably A given B. But it's much more complicated because you're buying multiple pieces in a market. Or another term for this is market basket analysis, right? So what you're really saying is they ran a study at a larger chain of convenience stores in the Northeast in the 90s, I want to say. And one of their common association rules for late night purchases was beer and diapers. Well, think about this. Who would be buying beer or who would be buying diapers at a convenience store late in the evening? If you have kids, you understand if, oh God, we're out. My wife is very mad at me because, right, the kid's sick or been yelling all day or we ran out of diapers. I'm going to go run to the convenience store, not the grocery store, right? Not the big box retailer, the convenience store. You know what, since I'm here, you know what? Yeah, I'll just grab a six-pack while I'm here. That's how association rules work. Funny enough, that is 80% of when you walk down a grocery store aisle, why different things are there. They're next to each other. Well, this does the same logic with text and words across the board. So instead of doing it from, I have groups, right? Item 1, item 2, item 3. This actually does within a sentence and within corpus. And they'll say either do within periods or within paragraphs or whatnot. Same type of logic. All right, so I'm not going to go super crazy into the math again, but these are the two different ideas. So the problem with, not necessarily the problem, one of the hurdles with LDA, outputs are much more stat driven. LSA is much more visual or factor analysis driven, right? So you have predefined clusters pretty easily. Doesn't matter. They give you about the same answer. Depends on the audience, depends on the journal you're looking at. They don't like it the first way, run it the other way, truthfully. Or run it both and you can say you've done a comparative study. It doesn't matter. But in the grand scheme of things, this is still just going to be descriptive in nature. Because I'm having these most common terms, A given B given C, right? These are all together and they fall into one group over here. That is a topic, right? Same logic, two different approaches. All right, so once you do that, what do? All extracted topics, regardless of what you're doing, has to be defined, i.e. I need a real subject matter expert to tell me what these are. It can't just be words. If you just give me words without context mean nothing, right? So you got to be careful. Truthfully, the same thing with numbers, right? Numbers without context. If you just give me a bunch of numbers with nothing on there, what's going to happen? Yay! You got a delta of 2. Okay, does that mean my bank account only went up by $2 this paycheck? That's a big problem, right? Or hey, you know what? My stock, I have a whole bunch of shares, went up by 2 full points. Hey, that's great, right? Numbers with no context are meaningless. Text and terms with no context have the same problem. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, right? You at least got to label it. Give me a reason why those labels matter. Once you go through there, right, you have to define them. The problem with this is it's extremely iterative nature. Do it, redo it, do it, redo it. One of my greatest mistakes early on as a doc student is we were doing stuff with journal abstracts, and I got this wonderful topic that said something about copyright reserved, email privacy. Basically, at the very end of most journal copyright notice, yeah, I forgot to take that out. It's iterative in nature. You learn, right? So you say just ignore all those or drop that off when you do your scrape or whatever else. But it doesn't matter. The system doesn't care, right? It's running the math. It doesn't know to avoid this. You know to avoid this. Right? That's the difference. A number without context or topics without context mean nothing. You need to be the subject matter expert. It doesn't matter what you work in. You need to be the subject matter expert. And so the 2 different ones. The first one is a wisdom of clouds discussion for e-commerce. Currently, this is under the review at the Journal of Service Research. Nice a publication, and the other one is about association rules. This is the Journal of Management Information Systems right now. So I could play the other parts with this, but hey, nice, easy. I'll say easy APUBs, but they're good APUBs. So this first one, I do a lot of stuff on top of analytics itself. I do a lot of weird e-commerce stuff, a lot of online, a lot of very interesting, weird conversations of why people buy stuff, or more appropriately, how do I deal with the proxy of I've got my wonderful, wonderful device, and so I don't leave the house. I just shop from here. Well, how do I get past the idea of I can't go and pick this up anymore to look at it? What do I use in proxy for this? Most people use the proxy of customer comments or online reviews or all sorts of other stuff. Well, so how do you, I hate to say manipulate that. My computer science people here, how many people do stuff with recommender systems? Do you know what I'm talking about with that yet? Anybody go down that road? Yeah, well, there's all sorts of fun stuff there of how does Netflix make their money? What's the value proposition for Netflix? This is a great way to view this. What does Netflix really do? Is it the fact that they have everything on the computer that you could watch? Or it's the fact that they provide you options for stuff that you would actually like to watch so you keep on coming back because you see value? That is why there's so much money in recommender systems. That's why there's so much stuff being driven on the computer science side for that. Because very simply, I can sit there and scroll through all these, right? I have my own media server at the house, but you know what? The fact that it'll tell me, oh, watch this, you'll like it, based off of what you've seen previously. Oh man, this is awesome. Yes, please, tell me more, right? Well, we do the same thing with shopping or food, right? Right? Watch this video. Oh, you like this one? Watch this other cat video. Oh, you like cats? Here's another cat video, right? Exactly. The value of the company is the logarithm. That's also one of the big arguments with TikTok and the US government of not divulging it and who owns it and whatnot. It's one of the other issues of the value of their company is the logarithm. Because how a recommender system works, right? How do I get you to stay here longer? That's how I win. I hate to put it that way, but there's a lot of truth to that. And so this is one here we started playing with, just how do you do and buy stuff online? Because done a lot of interesting arguments. About 35% of people basically just straight up consider them useful but not trustworthy, which is actually kind of surprising. I thought the number would actually be higher. I'm much more jaded about online shopping now, maybe because I do a lot of research in this box. But think about it. I can't go to the store. I need to buy something. What do you buy? All right, I'll go look at something on Amazon. Which one do you pick? I don't know. One with the most reviews?
The one with the lowest price.
One with the lowest price? Well, and this goes back to my discussion I made fun of earlier. Quality doesn't have a name, right? Define it, right? Best one for a certain price, meeting my price point, something that doesn't break. Is it a function of functionality? Is it a function of how much it's actually going to cost me? Right? The more expensive a product, I generally expect a higher level of quality. What are you doing? It's all different. But one of the things we started worrying with this, or starting playing with this, is my dissertation chair is one of the early guys that did the scales and designs about the difference between just product quality and service quality. Well, what happens in an online environment? I buy something. You sent me the product, right? So from a research perspective, or maybe from a pure recommender perspective, or maybe from a pure commerce perspective, what do you expect your comments to contain? You bought the product. What should you be telling me about the product? Do you think that's actually true? Have anybody read customer comments? How much of them how much stray away from just product quality? Well, what does that mean to your star rating? If you had two products, same price, 4.6 and a 4.4, would you actually open up the reviews if it's something you need to buy quickly? What would you do? I'd buy the 4.6. So you have no idea what's impacting the content of the reviews are, do you? Oh, so we're very trusting in here, right? Maybe I'm too jaded being an analytics, right? I'm not that trusting anymore. Maybe because I do research in this box all the time. And so what the other problem is, how do you use them? What do we actually do? What happens with it? So you start finding really ugly things in here. We limited this. We did some basically content-based. So we tried to lock this into similar products. People say the similar things. Greater historical information, a whole bunch of different things. How many people have actually played with customer comment data? Anybody in here? Okay, so they collect a whole bunch of different things. Right? Star, right? Was it helpful? How many reviews have you done? The comments, the product, actually the ASN ID, the Amazon ID number, the comment group, all sorts of junk, right? Okay, that can't be that bad. But how does this work with the idea of how do I recommend stuff? Well, hopefully, right, you're recommending stuff you approve of. My recommender system is then going to go through and say, hey, this is the best one of these products, right? Or maybe I even go through and click that button that says, I'm interested in this type of product, but I want it to be filtered by. Systems are getting better, right? Go back to Netflix. I want to be a movie that I'll like based on my preference, but in this genre. Same logic, right? So I need a product, buy this that I'm interested in. High pros, low quality. Now they have eco-friendly. What other weird stuff I could see on Amazon I saw the other day, right? Same argument. Recommender system if this is what you want with a content filtering approach, right? That's every day. We take it for granted. We trust it. Might be a mistake. So what we got in here is the other problem I have with this. If I'm going to look at product and service dimensions, right? Tangible versus the all-hated Amazon delivery guy. Untangible, right? Is he the guy kicking my thing down the curb? Is he the guy that actually puts it by my door? Is it the guy that leaves it out in the rain? Right? Untangible. Uh-oh. This is where things get interesting. So the problem with that is I need to control for what's a good product? What's a bad product, right? Because you're going to give me a non-normal distribution. If you've ever looked at the distributions of star ratings, there are like very one way or the other. I love it or I hate it, right? Not very many, right? How often you guys wrote a review something and gave them a 3? It's either I love this professor or I hate this guy, right? Yeah, you're like, oh no, he was just average, man. You don't do that. That takes too much effort. All these things are driven by human emotion. Well, you got to realize that. Then you talk about the distribution of what you're looking at. And so I want to control for what they are. And so I use something called the Consumer Buying Guide from U.S. World News and World Reports. Yeah, I'm old. Somebody might actually know. They guys used to sell these as books. You go through and they tell you the best one of all the products they have. Now I can digitize it. So therefore you have a expert review, a quantitative value of what you consider the overall quality of the product is. So if I have an entire distribution of groups, dishwashers, I've got good dishwashers and I got bad dishwashers. Well, therefore that helps you control for actual quality because I'm interested in the service side. How do I filter, is it a piece of junk or not, out before I ever get there? Well, these are the things when you start talking about research, and it doesn't matter what your area is. I'm trying to isolate one thing. So think about how you isolate it. How do you do the work with it? I'll have to go a little quick. All right, so I did 2 different groups. We did laptops and TVs. I have about 300,000 Amazon reviews. I just cut this into something small. And so what do? Great way, right? 5-star. Great TV, incredible picture. Life is great. Very disappointed with both delivery lost in... wait a second. And then also, it's a display, not a TV. Okay, that's product and service. Not a complaint about the machine, but about Amazon. But all this goes into the math. This gives us our average star rating. So if you know anything about math and proportions, if there's enough of these, right, weighted average, so we start playing with these, right? So we don't do LSA again. So out of these, warranties and products for laptops, or actually as a whole, I found about 12.5% on each category. One was, I think, so about 10% between the 2 categories are tied to service dimensions. So you're telling me 10% of all your reviews are driven by something I can't control. Or maybe if I provide my 3PL money, I pay for people to do it or not, yeah, that's a big problem. But let's make it a little bit easier from a visual perspective. Star ratings. About 60%, 20, 7, 5, and then, right, whoop, fish hook. Well, let's break them up. This, right, is no service dimensions. Very common. This, service dimensions. So stuff I don't control, stuff that you're not supposed to be reviewing, stuff that I have nothing that I'm supposed to do with it, is directly driving down your perception of my product, of what you buy online, which also then means you didn't buy the right one, did you? You picked the highest number. Kind of scary. Very scary. So, bunch of basic stat, ran it through to see which ones actually are significant. Biggest thing, service quality matters. So, depending on what you do, there's a reason why Amazon went to Amazon's own local delivery stuff. Try to control that. Direct and indirect, there's some big econ stuff you could play with this, but I'm not going to go that route. Aggregate star ratings are misleading, so basically the argument of the wisdom of the crowds is theoretically flawed with something like this. Easy, simple, not really. Stuff we take for granted. The flip side, right? We're going to do the same thing with information systems and security products. Not really the same. Do you know what an assurance seal is? So, U.S. News and World Reports, top 20 college, right? Get a little sticker, goes on your website. Well, for IT concepts, right? Security awareness awards, all the other pieces that go with it. Well, funny enough, my question is, and one of the things we ran into on an e-commerce side is, Newegg allows you to say when I say this is what it was, you used to tell me the level of expertise you have in the field. Which is more valuable? Who cares? Do they care? What's more useful? Once again, another more weird question. Right, so basic assurance seals. Yeah, this one, most people have seen that one. The Norton one's an easy one. Right? That shouldn't be a big deal. Everybody continues to use them because it's a visual display of a way to hopefully garner or enforce trust in my product. See, it's certified. It's great. We're not going to tell you who certified it or not, or where it came from, or what was the criteria. So again, I'm very jaded, but it's great, right? Versus, hey, I'm going to tell you in my review, yeah, I'm an expert. I swear, man. Believe me. Read my comment. Well, funny enough, those actually matter. So as you go through it, right, verified buyer flag, or something as easy as a verified purchase, versus you get into something a little bit more of, this is wonderful, I have very basically a certain level of context or detail. Because what happens, or what causes the problem, is when I have a whole bunch of reviews, what do? Do I read all of them? Come on, right? Hey, here's 95,000 reviews for the iPad. Let me read all of those. Right? I love teaching from the extremes because it hammers it home in a hurry. There's no way. So we go, you guys have heard the term heuristic processing? You develop your own system to come up with the best information. That's just a heuristic. That's all it really means. So you develop your own heuristic processing to figure out what I think is credible or not. So because of this, we go through and try to figure out how you viewed or gauge credibility. Because go back to your recommender systems. I want to provide what has value. Because truthfully, if the product's crap, I tell my users that. So you trust my website, so you buy other things here. Sounds counterintuitive. Very simply, if I'm doing anything through a third party, I'm taking a chunk off the top. But if I told you don't buy this software, buy this other one, you're still buying it probably from me. So I get my piece. Hopefully these guys fix their problem. And oh yeah, by the way, you trust me because I told you don't do it. Right? It's not like it used to be and it's sitting in my warehouse. I'm not paying inventory on it. I'm not holding it. It's a dud. I'm not trying to push them out the door. Oh no. It's coming from either something you've placed in my warehouse or even directly from the manufacturer. Or, better yet, you're just downloading it online. Right? Newegg, if it's software, right? There is no storage side. So I want you to trust me more than anything else because you're going to keep on using my website. More hits, more use, more money. No one's taught you how e-commerce works yet. That's another long, scary discussion. All right, so you go through. We stuck with antivirus and internet security, only about 7,000. Same different type of discussion, name, manufacturer, who they did. Technical expertise, which was always fascinating. The fact that you could tell me that, yeah, I am a 3 on technical expertise. I can actually do this much. Because do you care? And so we started going through here. I'm not going to go super crazy on the math. I've got 5 different levels of, right? That's why the 5 little eggs up top, all right? Technical understanding. What can you do? All right? So you go through. Funny enough, we ran LDA and we pulled out only 6 topics, which doesn't really shock you if you know anything about security or easy software. Disk recovery functionality, virus detection, hardware resource. Oh, lost the line. Product support, config, right? These are easy. These are very, very standard from the security realm. This is what they do, right? But which parts of these do people care about? If I want to buy it online, why does it matter? not everyone is going to have the level of knowledge, we'll just use those terms, about the software of what you're trying to do, what you're trying to do with it. Right? And so what pieces are important? How do I drive them from my recommender system standpoint? And so as you go through here, I'm not going to go too crazy on how we did all the math for log linear. We'll get into here. Weird things we noticed. Verified buyers are less likely to report their technical understanding. If you bought it, for some reason, they're not going to say how skilled they are. Kind of weird. More of a data artifact, but the logic of why, you could go back in a bunch of different ways. But verified buyers are really interested in disk recovery, general functionality, and product support, which makes sense. If you're just someone that bought it and you've used it, I'm not trying to do this from an ego perspective. I'm going to tell you about a product online, right? This is what happened. These are the things I needed it for. The flip side is we start dealing with these different groups, right? So understanding by topic, you get a whole bunch of different weird pieces. So we get some negative associations between TU and disk recovery. And so technical understanding, as technical understanding went up, the likelihood of you talking about something like disk recovery went down. Because generally, it should make sense. My very, very technical users, right? We start getting some of these high and somewhat high. Oh, right? 0, 1s, and 4s again. So kind of makes sense. What's just kind of strange is I don't get a lot of 2s, which is virus detection. Which is, right? That leads into a different set of questions. We'll get there. But why did all this work? We played with all this. We dove into this. The reason why we got into this is that helpful comments, which are most recommender systems were driven by, right? Remember when you read something, does it say, was this comment helpful? And they let you click on it or not? Yeah, those don't really do a very good job because they mean different things. And very simply, different users need different things. The other bigger issue is how do we improve recommender systems? Because once again, we still have the service dimension stuff filtering in. And then, oh yeah, by the way, how do we do this in such a format to actually get hard technical answers? Right, and that's most what, from a software security standpoint, what you should be reading, not a I dislike, whatever, right? The next step with this is actually sentiment analysis, and that's something else for another time. So really, what do we learn from all this? Right? There's all sorts of different things. We can find relationships in large chunks of data, but the data is key by itself. It doesn't do anything by itself, right? You have to have the data. It's a classification tool. It's descriptive in nature, right? You only describe stuff. It's an input or a very, very interesting output from a descriptive standpoint. You have to force it the next step, regardless of what you do and how you do with it, right? Plot it over time, right? Anything else, it's only an input for what you're trying to do. And then, hey, research and design is always essential. Doesn't matter what you're trying to do, you got to plan it out. One of the biggest flaws in research for someone that reviews stuff all the time is the fact that it's blatantly obvious that you didn't plan out your study. And you will make these wonderful magical gaps and jumps of why we got here. Always remember to tell me, this is why I did it. This is why I did it again. And just by the time, if you weren't listening to me a third time, yes, this is why we did this. Right? This is the contribution and why. Be incredibly formulaic. Right? The other kind of best hint, or I guess what term I want to use, word of advice I can tell you is, remember, imitation is one of the best forms of flattery. Pick your target journal where you want to go. use that as a template for how you should write. This is what should be discussed. This is the structure of the writing. This is what you're looking for. This is the level of granularity and detail. Pick 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 articles from that journal. Read them, know them, understand why it's written the way it is. And very simply, if you don't cite the journal that it's in, more than likely you're going to get desk rejected anyway. Generally 3 is probably the better answer to start with, because you're telling me that please publish my wonderful document, but hey, I didn't actually ever really read your journal to see if you have anything similar. So does this actually fit or not? But please take it. So that's a hard lesson to learn. So any questions besides you guys want to go home and sleep? Not yet.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So do these companies have an incentive to improve their recommending? Does Amazon want that to be a good tool? Or, I mean, I think they manipulate it.
They do. I'm actually working on something else for industrial marketing management about how we're seeing some issues with that. They are incentivized, how do we say this nicely? They are incentivized to stay at the upper or on par with the upper edges of what everybody else does. They are not incentivized to be the front edge at all from a recommender system. Because very simply, right, they're the 800-pound gorilla. People don't care. They have a decent idea. You're comfortable with it. And so unless you're trying to, and especially that they're so broad boxed, right? They do everything. And so if you can't necessarily find something, you can't necessarily have the perfect level of refinement, not so much. Netflix, on the other hand, right? Hulu, all those guys, yeah. They are incredibly incentivized to do this. Because, right? Most of them have similar, if not the same content. So the value for them is, how do I keep you to watch? Have you keep on watching to keep pay for it? Or to keep stealing your buddy's login, right? So you at least keep on watching my commercials. How do I incentivize that? I have to make sure, right, I keep you here. With Amazon, I want you to buy something. It's a little bit different. Now, more niche product stuff, the better my recommender system, the more likely you're going to come back, because you build a higher level of trust of, hey, you guys know what you're talking about. I'm going to go to you instead of going to Amazon. Right? That's the other problem, right? If I'm not Amazon, how do I keep you to come over here? Right? We were doing some work with Alibaba, and truthfully, Alibaba's comments are junk because they allow you to go back and change them. I complain. The vendor contacts me, generally gives me a discount, whatnot. I change it back. Thank you for your wonderful work. Or just delete it. Oh, yeah. Pulled the whole bunch of Alibaba data, about 200,000. We were pulling stuff in. I'd tell the ladies I was working with, I can't do anything with this. This is absolutely garbage. Because there is no complaint. Everybody thinks it's all wonderful. So you're telling me that I'm going to publish something that says, hey, everything's wonderful in the world from the world of e-commerce? No one's going to believe me. It doesn't matter what you say, right? Everything's great, man. Everything we buy is perfect. Yeah, no. Right? Go back to the natural skepticism part. But yeah, no, and that's kind of what makes it so interesting is we forget the motivation of why we have the systems. Any other good, interesting, weird questions? You want to do math assignments? Do math instead. Yes?
So in this recommendation system, what I feel like is trying to explore what a user might like and try to focus more on similar items or similar products. A lot of them, they neglect something that is completely different, something that is not being seeked for, but still could be a good, really good product. So I think that causes a lot of biasness for products. So if any company or if any kind of algorithm, if there anything that's coming up that's also considering those things.
So you have to play with, if you're going to play with this from a marketing standpoint, you can play with this from a brand restrictiveness, right? I'll give you a great experiment. Go to your Amazon and go into the options to delete all internal cookies. And go look at changes in your recommendations. Then delete all the cookies off your computer completely in your web browser. And go look what changed your recommendations again. Because the first mistake we make is we're thinking that Amazon itself only looks at what I've bought for Amazon or what I've looked at for Amazon. Let's try this in an easier way. How do web advertisements work? How do I get banner ads? Why is everybody's banner ads different? One of the basic assignments I do for my master's data mining students for clustering. How do they work? Where does it come from? Anybody know? Go.
Based on the things we search for.
Right. Well, or more appropriately, how do I tag or know you've been to the website? I've got a cookie, right? Okay, so I've got cookies. Well, I'm trying to advertise for a basket of 7 products. We'll make this easy, right? Well, of those 7 products, how do I figure out what people are most likely to buy them? Well, these are the people that bought them in the past. These are the cookies on their machine. This person bought this one. This person bought this one. And so you end up doing some form of clustering algorithm. There's a bunch of different ways to play with this, right? And so it makes a box. So if I log in, I see these, you have this collection of cookies, therefore you're most likely, I'm going to give you this advertisement. That's where all your banner ads come from. Yeah, but the problem is that also is how aspects of the recommendation system works. So I'm juggling what you've bought and looked at on my website, what you're searching for on my website, with what you looked for in the past. So if you really want to start doing something crazy, go delete all the cookies you have out of Amazon. Or, better yet, maybe it's scary, maybe it's not, go log into Amazon or just type in, go to Amazon.com in the computer lab. Because theoretically, right, unless somebody forgot to log out or whatnot, the virtual machine technically should have limited numbers of cookies already in there, and you should get a very boring box, unbiased recommendation. Then just log into what your normal account would be. Do the same search. Tell me why they're different. And that'll pretty much hammer home your discussion of, yeah, it's biased. Is it really biased? Or is it tailored for what they think your expectations and needs are?
Well, how do you distinguish this?
Tomato, tomato. Right? Because we talk about bias and concerns and scare and privacy, right, all the time. One of the basic discussions I have with my students about creepy in analytics is the best way to go with this. Okay, you realize that most shopping carts have an RFID tag in them, right? You do know this. Okay? RFID tag and essentially a ceiling grid, so I can grid my entire store. That'll do a 3x geolocation, and I can pinpoint where you are at any one point, or this cart is at any one point in time in the store. Is that creepy?
Really do that?
Oh yeah, we're not even. That's scraping the iceberg. One of my buddies of mine years ago started doing this. Started with the early research at Walmart. So this would be like late '90s when they start the initial RFID tag discussion, because they were looking at how I RFID tag to speed up delivery of stuff to the back room. What they realize is you RFID tag every box, they fall off. It's one of my students, right? They fall off, and so it becomes a mess, and they get stuck on the old pallets and whatnot. What they realize is the better idea is this pallet contains X items, one RFID tag, right? So that went the threshold and locked in. Well, that was in the 90s. Now they realize that, hey, I can track where you are within X distance. Well, either by you giving me permission through your my app or by RFID tagging our carts. So I can see where you are. Collect the data, depends on you want to do it. You can do a time shot, snapshot, right, every minute, every 30 seconds. I can trace where you go. Okay, kind of scary. Little creepy, not bad. But wait a second. I'm at Kroger. I'm cheap. Here's my Kroger card. What does my Kroger card do? It now links everything in my basket to me. Uh-oh. That creepy? Maybe, maybe not. Then I pay it with my debit card. And it's all tied to my financial institution. Previous transactions. I can go through how frequently this card was used at this store. Not necessarily did I or did I not use my Kroger card, or more appropriately, even what did I buy without my Kroger card? Oh yeah, another creepy discussion. Now I can develop me a profile based off of what you've bought, how frequently you shop, how you walk through the store, because different shopping patterns matter. Some of them signify you have children, different things. Oh yeah. What else we want to say? Where you live now gives me a basically -4 zip code. And if I have anything tied to any form of market research firm, I then have demographics of the zip code, location, employment type, where you go, what you do. Are we getting creepy yet? And then when I log into my Kroger app, my Walmart app, they use that to recommend my various products. Yeah, that's how it works. Nothing shows up on your phone by accident. Nothing is placed in a grocery store by accident. It isn't. We take it for granted because we're consumers. That's what we do. That's our job. In the grand scheme of things, is it biased or not? Is it creepy or not? Right? This generation's a little bit more willing to go with that level of intrusion. I'm much more concerned with it, but that's just me. Anything else? Yeah, I always got weird stuff I could talk about. I could do this all day. No?
Okay. Any other questions?
If you guys have any questions, please email me. I've been on multiple dissertations in the College of Engineering. I have my own, I babysit in College of Business. If you have any weird stat questions, I actually have a couple of my grad students that are taking my Six Sigma class that they're asking me questions on their dissertation or their thesis about how to do the math. It's like, guys, this is just basic stat. Realize that I'm a statistician generally first for most of this. So if you have weird stat questions, or if you're just interested in text mining, let me know. I don't mind. Right? I've played this game too many weird times. It's always fun. Come to me with weird, interesting questions. Don't come with me something boring. That's how you entertain me. It's like cookies.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Not a problem.